Chapter 6. Apparently, the public library, because of course that's what the giant book building was a happening place to be on a muggy day in the early summer. The parking lot was jam packed, and excited children were tugging parents between compacts and trucks on the way to summer program fun. We joined the stream and made our way toward the front desk. According to Susan, we needed to start there to make sure we could take out books and get information on where the different genres might be located. I had no clue what she was talking about, but nodded my head like a good boy and trailed after her. The woman behind the desk looked nothing like Mrs. Finkel, the 93-year-old white-haired, stern but sweet old grandma who handled the school library back home. Oh no, this librarian was a college-aged, rainbow-haired smiler that made me immediately forget why we were there until a well-placed elbow from Susan reminded me. The library's expectant look told me that I had probably missed a greeting or question of some time. So I quickly used an exhale to say, "Hi, my name is Boehm. How are you? Cool hair." She giggled. "Yes, Susan just introduced you. My name is Jill. It's very nice to meet you, too." You too, I mumbled as Susan snickered at me. "So, what brings the two of you here on such a fine day?" Jill steered the conversation with a wink at my discomfort. "Wouldn't you rather be out swimming with your friends?" "No one has moved in near us yet," confided Susan. "But we do want to learn more about the area." "And our weird house," I blurted out helpfully and much too loudly. "And ciphers, too." "Goodness!" Jill, far from taken aback at my outburst, seemed intrigued by our requests and quickly began tapping away on her keyboard. "Let's see what we can find then, shall we?" "Town history is over on that aisle toward the back corner." She pointed to a slightly dingy and deserted section of the nonfiction library. "There should still be a little display of the books and flyers we have on the end cap nearest to the restrooms. As for the lake, I don't know what house you live in, but that doesn't really matter. Just wait right here for a tick or two." She scurried away on bare feet, and I noticed that her toenails were painted to match the hair streaming behind her like a unicorn's mane. Before I could gather myself or soothe my seemingly raw nerves, even before Susan's hiss to "Get it together, goofball," could dissipate into the air-conditioned breeze, Jill emerged once more from the stacks, carrying back with her two books and an even bigger smile. "Okay, you two," she crowed as quietly as she could, waving what we could make out were two different volumes from the same set. "You are in luck. These right here are collections of our area myths and legends. A local guy collected, wrote them up, and printed them a few years ago as part of his degree program. They're pretty awesome. But the head librarian refuses to put them with the rest of the town history books because they aren't technically factual. If I hadn't remembered them, you may never have found them." Jill's smile beamed like the sun, scorching my retinas as I reached out, blindly searching to relieve her of the books. I didn't mind. The books were heftier than they looked, and a near bobble snapped me out of my trance. I didn't mind that either. When I finally managed to get a firm grip on the books, Susan and Jill had moved back to the front desk and were looking up books on ciphers for me. They were chatting like old buddies, and Susan was casually perched behind the desk, where it would be easier for her to spot an interesting title. I couldn't even keep my brain together to form a proper sentence. I guessed it must be a girl thing. I made my way across the 3 feet of tile that separated me from them and gingerly set my cargo down on the counter. Jill immediately swept them away and handed me a sheet with what could have been runic markings for all I knew, declaring that she would start a stack for us. Jill shooed us on our way. Away we went. A quick conference with Susan, hidden in the snacks so Jill wouldn't think I was a complete idiot, taught me the library system that I had somehow never picked up on during the years of Mrs. Finkel's militaristic reign. As soon as she completed what she termed my refresher course, smirking the entire time, Sue nudged me in the right direction and took off down an opposite aisle, running her fingertips lovingly across the exposed spines and breathing deeply of the ink and paper musk that permeated the entire building. Susan was obviously in her element. I, on the other hand, felt in over my head. Moving much more slowly than my cousin, I too began my search. Staring carefully at the number and letter combinations on each book spine and shelf marker, and comparing them to the sheet of paper in my hand, I made my way carefully more and more deeply into the labyrinth of bindings. I soon found myself in the 900s, the segment of nonfiction that I had been searching for. True mysteries and war stories surrounded me in the history and geography section of the library. There, around the halfway point, I hit the jackpot. There were books about wartime code breakers and spies, books about royalty and inventors with coded notes ruling the world, books about characters who are particularly adept at code breaking and mystery solving. Those made me excited because I had actually heard of Sherlock Holmes and Hercule Poirot because my grandparents watched movies about them. There was even one full shelf covered in an amazing assortment of books for all ages aimed specifically at the reading, breaking, using, and creating of codes and ciphers. I soon had a large stack of interesting and intimidating titles ready to take to the front and begin to make my way back toward the local history display Susan had been heading towards. She wasn't there. I searched every row from there to Jill's chair, still no Susan. Jill watched my slow searching progress and had her hands out ready to relieve me of my load as soon as I neared her domain. Then my rainbow haired angel of a librarian pointed to a staircase I had not noticed before and smiled. Your cousin went downstairs. A sign by the steps proclaimed the word fiction with a downward pointing arrow. Of course she did, I grumbled good naturedly. Thank you. It took another half an hour to convince Susan not to pack the entire fantasy section into the car and that we needed to find our mothers. By the time we made our way back up to the front, Jill had been sent on her lunch break, leaving a slightly more respectable and typical looking librarian to set up all four of us with our library cards. Don't worry, she assured us with a toothy grin. Jill left me with strict instructions to give you the royal treatment. She was true to her word and got all four of us set up with brand new cards, online checkout information, and bags for our stacks of reading material, all within just a couple of minutes. Mom called Dad and Jack as we left the library, but neither of them answered their phones, and Uncle Paul had left his at home. So we took ourselves across the street to the buffet and started lunch without them. In the 10 minutes it took for the three of them to make their way into a late lunch, we had all filled plates and fallen headfirst into our top choice books. For one of the first instances in the history of our family, lunch was a quiet affair.